Narayana namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udiraye. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So we are continuing our discussion of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we are on chapter 8. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to participate in these sessions for almost 4 weeks. And for whatever reason, I was down with some kind of infection. It is not COVID, but something else altogether, where I wasn't able to speak and I wasn't able to give these sessions. So we missed a few weeks of sessions. But Srimad Bhagavatam, when spoken with faith and received with faith, it has the ability to enthuse us for lifetimes. So it's not so much a matter of weeks, but for lifetimes. So we sustain ourselves on Srimad Bhagavatam for lifetimes. So even if one has heard once and has received the knowledge with faith, in a typical class within our society, all the ingredients of devotional service are discussed, which is, on an average, we speak about the chanting of Harinam, we speak about and glorify Krishna, we speak and glorify Krishna's devotees, we speak about the glory of Krishna's Leela and Krishna's Rupa, and as a consequence, the ingredients for being able to render devotional service are received even in one single class. And if it is spoken with faith and it is received with faith, that faith has the ability to practically create a future for us, enthuse us, which is the potency of Srimad Bhagavatam. What is fascinating about Krishna consciousness is the fact that we are worshipping the Samam Bonam, we are worshipping the Avatari, we are worshipping the origin of everything. And how glorious and how fortunate it is to have just come in touch with Krishna consciousness by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. One could have set objectives in life of being very successful, and you could have been successful, or we could have been successful in many different ways. We could be successful from a relationship perspective, we could be successful from an economic perspective. One could do very well professionally and as a consequence have very good economics or economic prosperity. One could have many relatives and be surrounded by loving relatives, and one could practically have very good health. There are so many different ways in which one could have proceeded in life. But ultimately, we would have lost out if we had not come in touch with Srila Prabhupada. Because historically, human life and human existence is meant to come with a few disappointments. And one is supposed to have some challenges with economics. Sometimes you may, there are lifetimes when we have done very well. There are lifetimes when you don't do very well. There are lifetimes when you're surrounded by people, and there are lifetimes when you spend your life alone. There are lifetimes when we have had very good, robust health, and there are lifetimes when we have been chronically sick. And there have been lifetimes where we have accomplished a lot, and there have been lifetimes when we may not have accomplished a lot from a material perspective. So these variegatedness in terms of material existence has always been there. It's always been a part of who we were. We were successful at times and we were not successful at times. We were good in certain areas and we were bad in certain areas. But to come into life and to have been given a process where one could be economically successful and economically unsuccessful, one could be healthy or unhealthy. One could have many relationships in terms of people surrounding them versus not having many relationships and feeling a little bit alone. One could be very successful in terms of accomplishments where people could praise them and they could be on top of the world in terms of their accomplishments. And or we could have a very insignificant, materially insignificant life. But all of these are immaterial because Srila Prabhupada practically gave us the summum bonum. He practically ensured that after 20, 30, 40 years of existence on this planet, we would come to a realization that the bead bag, the chanting beads, and the Mahamantra, and Srila Prabhupada's books, Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the mercy that you have received, is in fact the most valuable of all gifts that have been given. And we would have the ability to appreciate this because we would see and be reflective, and we could be retrospective. We could go in retrospect and look at our life and say, yes, there were a few things that worked well, and there were a few things that didn't quite work well. But then here I am. I'm particularly grateful because Srila Prabhupada salvaged me. He saved me. He gave me something which is not dependent on economics, is not dependent on health. He gave me something which is not dependent on being surrounded by a lot of people versus not having much. It is not dependent on being particularly successful versus not being successful. He gave me something so special. He practically gave me Krishna. Amongst the 64 qualities of Krishna, there are 50 qualities that the jiva can claim to attain. And those 50 qualities the jiva can attain are in very minute magnification, which means compared to Krishna, he has those 50 qualities in an absolute level, and we have those 50 qualities in minuscule, minute levels. Being Lord Brahma, the creator, who is an expansion of the Lord and his creative potency, the Gunavatara, means that the 50 qualities of the jiva are present to a far greater extent with Lord Brahma because of his perfection, as he is an expansion. Lord Shiva has 5 more qualities compared to Lord Brahma. And one can read about it in different scriptures. And those 5 qualities are also present in Lord Shiva, but not on an absolute level. Compared to Krishna, those 55 qualities of Lord Shiva are somewhat subdued in comparison to Krishna, because in Krishna's case, it's unlimited. It's unlimited. Lord Narayan has 60 qualities. Lord Narayan is the majestic representation of Krishna. He has 60 qualities, and these 60 qualities are on an absolute level, which means compared to the jiva, compared to Lord Brahma, compared to Lord Shiva, Lord Narayana has 60 qualities to an absolute level, which is practically limitless in terms of the potency of those 60 qualities. Krishna has 4 special qualities which are over and above Lord Narayan. Now, when we talk about Sri Narayana, when we talk about Sriman Narayana, we'll have to understand that amongst the various incarnations that we are familiar with, Lord Narasimha, Lord Rama, and Sri Varaha are direct incarnations of Narayana, which means their potency is on an absolute level, whilst other incarnations could be subdued. Other Viṣṇu Tattva incarnations could be subdued. It may not be at the absolute level. But with Varahadev, with Narasimhadev, and with Lord Sri Ram, complete manifestation of Sri Narayana's absolute potency is seen. There is a distinction in Shastra between Lord Ram, Lord Varaha, and Sri Narasimhadev amongst the various incarnations. Now, even if you had to take into account Sri Rama, Narasimhadev, and Lord Varaha, Krishna has 4 qualities that are quite distinct, which are over and above the 60 qualities of Sri Narayana, which are on an absolute level. Krishna's quality of 4 qualities of Leela Madhurya, Rupa Madhurya, and then Prema Madhurya and Viṣṇu Madhurya. These are the 4 qualities of Krishna that are considered to be superlative, which means that he is distinct because he is the avatari. Shastra uses the word Vipaschit Brahman to describe Krishna, which means he is all knowing, all the experiences and all kinds of leelas are subdued and within Krishna, which is he is all knowing. So as a consequence, establishing Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead was one of the missions of Srila Prabhupada. Establishing and giving Krishna to the world, which is also the mission of Srila Rupa Goswami. And as a consequence, giving Krishna, who is full with 64 qualities, are an absolute level, which means it's unlimited. And of these, there's Leela Madhurya. Because you cannot find Lord Narayan's pastimes, the extraordinarily sweet pastimes of Krishna as a child in Gokul. We cannot. In Mathura Mandal, Vrajamandal begins at Sona. As soon as you leave Gurgaon, Vrajamandal begins when you touch Sona, and then it goes all the way to Barsana, to Rajasthan, to different areas. Now, when you begin the Vrajamandal Parikrama, there you come to Gokul, which is near Mathura, and in the district of Mathura, and near the city of Mathura. And you also basically cross over and come to Vrindavan, and then you go to Govardhan, where it becomes more and more confidential. Now, Gokul, where Krishna basically had his pastimes of being a child, the baby pastimes, the Damodar pastimes. Very specifically, we celebrate the month of Damodara. We celebrate the month of Kartik as Damodara. It's a very special month because that particular pastime distinguishes Krishna. The childhood pastimes of Krishna distinguish him from Sriman Narayana. This is not found amongst any of his incarnations. The extraordinary nature of his pastimes of being subservient to his mother, being chastised by his mother, being chased around, and then being able to basically hide his opulence by his sweetness. That's why we use the word Leela Madhurya, because the sweetness of Krishna is hiding the Aishwarya of Lord Narayan. So there is a subduing of the majestic aspect of Sriman Narayana by the sweetness manifested by Krishna's pastimes, which distinguishes him as the absolute summum bonum, which is quite extraordinary that it is the sweetness which is subduing the majesty. In Vrindavan, it's a village atmosphere, and in a village atmosphere, there's not much opulence in terms of worship. Typically, I'm just saying typically, there isn't much. But there is the sweetness of worship, and there's the sweetness of the manifestation of pastimes, which overwhelms the extraordinarily elaborate worship that is seen in a temple of Sriman Narayana. The very elaborate worship where the Aishwarya subdues the Madhurya. Lord Narayana is sweet, but his majesty overwhelms the sweetness. Krishna is the opposite. His sweetness overwhelms the majesty. So the Aishwarya is completely overwhelmed by Krishna, and that is why one of the most distinguishing characteristics of Krishna is Leela Madhurya. Leela Madhurya, and then you have Rupa Madhurya. One may say that Lord Narayan is extraordinarily good looking. Lord Sri Ram is extraordinarily good looking. I mean, you can't really compare, or you can't even have some kind of a standard or a scale. But then Shastra is saying that this Krishna is so special that there is a certain sweetness in his Rupa, There's a certain sweetness in his form which subdues and overwhelms even the form of Sriman Narayana. Huh? It subdues and overwhelms. Now, what is the special characteristic of Krishna? He is crooked in three different places, right? He is bent and he is crooked in three different places. Have you seen the deity of Krishna? He is actually crooked in three different places. You would not really be able to find any manifestation of a deity of Lord Narayan in the Tribhanga, where Krishna basically is displaying his very sweet form of being crooked. This is so special that this Rupa Madhurya of his extraordinary beauty, not just of the deity form, but we're talking about the Lord himself, Krishna. His beauty is incomparable even when you make him stand next to Sriman Narayana, the majestic appearance of the Lord. And in Raja, he is not dressed opulently. He is dressed very simply. He wears a peacock feather. And those days, if you have a bunch of peacocks roaming around, this was the case even when Srila Prabhupada built the temple. Krishna Balram Mandir, when it was first built, it was a forest. You see, there were only trees, there were pieces of land. Sometimes I've heard the rickshawalas in Vrindavan tell me that they all used to play here in Krishna Balram Mandir. You know, these were all, now they are much older, these rickshaw guys. But then they were basically youngsters and they used to play here where Krishna Balram Mandir is, because this is all a forest. Yeah, this was all a forest, complete forest. Few shops here and there. So there was nothing much manifesting at that time. And then you had a lot of peacocks. You had a lot of peacocks in this forest. So finding a few feathers that have been shed by the male peacock is not very unusual. You can always find feathers. So Krishna gets decorated by the peacock feather that you find. Then they have certain minerals, and you can see these minerals in Govardhan, very specifically in Giriraj. When you go a little near and then you start examining Giriraj, not so much during parikrama, because during parikrama, people want to complete parikrama of Govardhan, and they don't pay attention to the little details. But if you go near the rocks, you will find many Govardhan Shilas with multiple colors, which means that there are many mineral deposits which give out various shades of color. So the cowherd boys used to decorate him with those minerals. Nothing opulent. Govardhan used to supply, Giriraj used to supply the minerals, the peacock used to give the feathers, and then there were wildflowers, and he used to just be decorated with all of those. This is how Krishna used to be seen. And this form was so sweet, or is so sweet, that it qualifies for one of the 64 opulences. Yeah, it qualifies. Fundamentally, it qualifies for one of the 64 opulences where there's Rupa Madhurya, there's Leela Madhurya, where it's incomparable pastimes of Krishna as a child. And then you have Rupa Madhurya, the extraordinary nature of his appearance, his extraordinary features. It is said that amongst the various qualities, one of the most distinguishing qualities of Krishna is Prema Madhurya. Why is it called Prema Madhurya? Is because he is surrounded by devotees who are madly in love. Unmada, they are practically mad in love. So there's a certain madness which is associated with being in love, where all kinds of rationale is forgotten, all kinds of ethics is forgotten. Yeah, they are people in love are far more accomplished yogis than yogis who sit in meditation. Yeah, my Guru Maharaj used to give this example that a lady wanted to meet her lover, and then as she was walking to meet her lover, there was a yogi who was sitting on the path. She practically stepped over him, stamped him, and then kept going. So she went and met her beloved, and then while she was returning, she saw this sadhu, and she paid obeisances. And the sadhu was furious. The sadhu was furious. He started asking her that, how could you be so foolish that you didn't even see me? I am sitting here engaging in sadhana, and I'm sitting here right in front of you, and you just practically stepped over me, stamped me as you went away. Aren't you shameless that your lust or whatever it is that has captured you does not even allow you to see who is in front of you? So this madness basically exposed that the woman was probably a better yogi in her pursuits than the yogi who was disturbed by her. So sometimes when people are in love, then their madness is such that they forget their rationale, they forget to behave properly, they just do not even know what they're doing. Because the senses are so powerful that the senses take over, and once the senses take over, the intelligence is lost, it's over. Krishna's devotees, this is just an example. A mundane example allows us to understand a far more intense spiritual example. Krishna's devotees who are in love with him are also experiencing madness because they can never be understood by others. They cannot be understood. Their motivations can't be understood. The nature of their sacrifice can't be understood. The nature of their behavior can't be understood. So Krishna has this distinguishing quality that amongst the four special qualities, one of the distinguishing qualities is Prema Madhurya, where the love which devotees have for him, his devotees, is incomparable, and it is worthy of distinguishing it as a characteristic of the Lord himself. It is not seen with others. This madness is not seen with others. This madness is so special that there's no rationale, there's no intelligence, there's really no application of any sense. They become completely madly in love, and Krishna has the ability to cause such madness. Leela Madhurya, the sweetness of his Leela, Rupa Madhurya, the sweetness of his form, has the ability to attract and surround himself with devotees who are madly in love with him. Prema Madhurya. Prema Madhurya is a characteristic of Krishna which is not found amongst his other expansions. Yeah. And then what is to be seen is that the Leela Madhurya, Prema Madhurya, which is being surrounded by devotees, and also the Rupa Madhurya, this is bewildering to Krishna himself. He gets bewildered. Even he cannot conceive as to why his devotees are so mad. What is it that they see in me? What is the nature of their bhakti? What is the nature of the emotions they carry? What is the nature of this madness where they forget everything and they give up everything just for me? He can't understand. It is inconceivable even for Krishna. Now, when such an inconceivable situation arises, Krishna descends. He wants to understand his own nature. How can he understand his own nature? Because he can't appreciate his own beauty. He can't appreciate his own Leela. You see, he's not a self-centered person. As a consequence, he's not so absorbed in his own stuff. He can't really understand what is happening to me. He can't really understand that how is it possible that my devotees could be so attracted to my beauty. What is the nature of my beauty? What is the nature of my Leela which is so attractive to the minds of my devotees? So he wants to become a devotee, because only if he becomes a devotee, he can understand this madness. Then Krishna descends as Gauranga Mahaprabhu. He comes as Gauranga Mahaprabhu because he literally wants to experience the madness of devotional service, which he himself is quite inquisitive about. This is the confidential reason for the descent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He descends in the mood of Srimati Radharani, the greatest of devotees, because by descending in the mood of Srimati Radharani, he would be able to see what she sees. Shastra says that even as devotees, as practicing devotees, if you want to understand Krishna, you need the help of Srimati Radharani. Without Hladini Shakti, without his internal potency empowering us, we really can't serve him. We cannot really serve him unless she blesses us. Yeah. Now, this is true of Krishna himself. Unless she empowers him, he can't see what is the nature of his devotee. So he comes in the mood of Srimati Radharani because she is the greatest of his devotees. And she, who is the internal potency, has the ability to reveal secrets of Krishna. See, the beauty is Krishna himself wants to know the secrets, and that power rests with Srimati Radharani. So Krishna descends as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, empowered, or rather in the mood of Srimati Radharani, so that he could understand the intricate nature of his Leela, his Madhurya, different kinds of sweetness. What is his Leela? What is the Leela Madhurya? What is the Rupa Madhurya? He also wants to understand Prema Madhurya, the nature of his devotees. How mad are they? You see, he can't really believe that someone could be this mad. So he wants to come and see and experience that madness. So he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who dances and faints, and he practically distributes prema because his heart is so filled with prema, he's just distributing. Prema Madhurya is always in the heart of the devotee. It is not in the heart of Krishna. That's why the distinguishing characteristic of Krishna amongst the 64 qualities is Prema Madhurya, that is particularly attributed to being surrounded by devotees. The devotees play such a big role in Krishna consciousness because prema exists in their heart. Even if Krishna wants to understand prema, he has to come as a devotee. It is prema in the hearts of the devotee that is distributed to us, which is why Krishna appears as Mahaprabhu distributing prema, because only a devotee can have prema in the heart for Krishna. How can Krishna have prema in the heart for himself? He can't understand it. It's inconceivable because it's one of his potencies. So he requires the help of Srimati Radharani. So Srimati Radharani's potency is required for the devotees to understand Krishna and to see his Rupa, to see his Leela. And Krishna requires her blessings to also see his own Leela, to understand his sweetness. This is the extraordinary position of Srimati Radharani. Very extraordinary position. That is why Lord Gauranga's Leela is so special, because he comes in the mood of Srimati Radharani. This is super special. It is really super special. There's nothing that exceeds this. This is the summum bonum who is coming as a devotee. And somehow, and I'm using the word somehow because none of us are qualified to come in touch with this extraordinary experience. Nobody is. But somehow, Srila Prabhupada created facilities for us to come in touch. He created facilities for us to talk about him in English, yeah, because it is so difficult. And he created facilities for us to understand this extraordinary nature of his appearance, and created facilities for us to practice. If you read Leelamrita, you will see an instance of Srila Prabhupada wanting to build the Krishna Balaram Mandir for his Western devotees. He built the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan for his Western devotees. He was afraid that because of their white bodies or black bodies, because of their not being connected to Vedic culture through their body, they may not be treated as well by the local temples. They may not have access. So even to this day, for example, with Jagannath Puri, Western devotees can't have darshan of Jagannath. They're prevented. Srila Prabhupada basically wanted to create facilities so that nothing is missed and everything is being made available. Yeah. So that's what he created. So he gave us this. So the beauty is that amongst the three qualities, Leela, Rupa, Prema Madhurya, Krishna decorates himself with the fact that he's surrounded by exalted devotees. So you can imagine how much emphasis and how much credence and how much power is being given to the presence of devotees in Krishna consciousness. Because even if the Lord wants to understand himself, he has to come as a devotee. the intelligence to be provided, the spiritual intelligence required to understand him and to understand his potency comes from Srimati Radharani, the greatest of devotees. The potency doesn't come from anywhere else. It is his internal potency, but then she has to basically say, look at yourself through my eyes. Look at yourself through my eyes. And Krishna has to look at himself through the eyes of Srimati Radharani. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah. Deep separation. Radharani is in very deep separation. Jagannath in Puri is in very deep separation. So Mahaprabhu goes to Puri to spend the rest of his years. Because Krishna is in deep separation, he is in deep separation as a devotee. So it was most appropriate and most confidential for him to be there in Jagannath Puri. So amongst all the deity forms of Krishna, the most confidential and the highest expression is seen in Jagannath. Jagannath is the highest expression of Krishna in a deity form. He is. That's why Mahaprabhu chose Jagannath Puri. He chose Jagannath Puri because Krishna is in the deepest level of separation. And this is Radharani in the deepest level of separation. Then Radharani is empowering Krishna, who is Mahaprabhu, to see what a devotee goes through. She's practically giving him an experience. And that experience is such that he understands what is separation. He understands the nature of his devotees. He understands the nature of the Leela of his devotees. So the Prema Madhurya part, which distinguishes Krishna from Sriman Narayana, is super special because that entire attribute is connected to devotees. So you can imagine when we say Vaishnava Aparad, why is it the number one aparad amongst chanting of Harinam? It is the number one aparad because this is an attribute of Krishna. If Krishna glorifies himself as saying that I am different and I'm special and this is why I am special, and he says that I'm surrounded by all these mad devotees, madly in love. They are all madly in love. They all take after Lord Nityananda's madness. They're all madly in love with Krishna. Krishna practically says that this is my good quality. I am superior. I am who I am. I'm the Samam Bonam. I am the absolute truth, and I can be called the absolute truth to the maximum extent because my devotees are so great. So this is why Vaishnava Aparad becomes such a heavy offense, because of the fact that devotees are given such a big place. Even amongst the 64 attributes, one of the attributes is Prema Madhurya, which is given to devotees. The fourth and the last of Krishna's opulences in terms of the 64 qualities is called Viṣṇu Madhurya. You will not find any incarnation playing the flute. Viṣṇu is the flute and Viṣṇu is a messenger. Yeah. He plays the flute, and this is a very special attribute because this is basically Madhurya, this is sweetness. It is a part of who he is. A very distinguishing characteristic is to play the flute. The flute plays the role of a messenger. The flute carries a message just as much as Vrinda Devi's parrots carries a message. Vrinda Devi, who manages the affairs of Krishna in the forest of Vrindavan, who manifests herself as Tulsi Maharani, she practically has messengers. The flute of Krishna competes with the messengers of Vrinda Devi in taking messages from him to Srimati Radharani. This is a very distinguishing characteristic. He conveys messages. And this is a very distinguishing characteristic. So the Viṣṇu Madhurya distinguishes him from the other opulences of Sriman Narayana. Even though Sriman Narayana is Krishna in the majestic form, these four characteristics are so special. Now, Srila Prabhupada gave us the Samam Bonam. He practically gave us the maximum extent one could ever think of in understanding the absolute truth. He practically gave us the unfiltered version. He practically gave us everything. He opened the door, gave us this. He qualified us by giving us the Sukriti that is required. He qualified us by giving us Sukriti. which is very special because we didn't come with qualification. He qualified us, saying, yes, there has to be some level of Sukriti, some kind of credit that you need for you to be able to chant Harinam. So Srila Prabhupada practically has an unlimited store of spiritual credits, which he distributes amongst his servants based on their qualification in terms of service, and enables them to be able to further themselves in devotional service. So he saved us. He practically gave us a legacy. He practically pulled us out of God knows how many lifetimes of stagnation, unlimited, by giving us the summum bonum. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam, as we look at the 8th chapter of the 3rd canto, is a conversation between Maitreya Rishi and Sri Vidura after the departure of Krishna. Now, Sri Vidura is a great devotee. He is transcendentally situated and he has all the wonderful qualities. And he is remembered by Krishna at the time of departure. And Maitreya Rishi is empowered to interact with Sri Vidura. So Krishna is practically bringing all his devotees together. This is a part of his feature, Prema Madhurya, of being surrounded by exalted souls. This is Krishna. So Prema Madhurya, Maitreya Rishi practically has the ability to receive instructions at the time. And then he also has the ability and he's given the power to distribute those instructions to Sri Vidura. Now, in this chapter, we talk about the manifestation of Lord Brahma from Sri Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. Now, who is Sri Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu? So you have Krishna, who is the summum bonum, who has 64 qualities in full. And then you have Sriman Narayana, who is the majestic form of Krishna, who has 60 qualities in full. And then from Sriman Narayana, the creative forms manifest. The first expansion of Srimad Narayana is Karanodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. Karana is the causal ocean, and then he is practically lying on the causal ocean. So he is the first Purusha. From him, you have Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, because from the pores of skin of Sriman Karanodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, you have the manifestation of universes. And the universes are empowered and they are practically given life by Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. He enters into the universe and becomes the soul of the universe. From his navel, you have a lotus stem which appears, and right on top of the lotus stem is Satyaloka, where Lord Brahma sits, and then he starts creating. And along the lotus stem, you have different planetary bodies, and you have the Earth, and then you have planetary systems above and below the Earth as well. Yeah, the 14 different planetary systems. Now, this is Krishna, this is Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. He is lying on the Garbhodaka ocean. This is the water of the ocean is called Garbhodaka because the universe is shaped in the form of a womb, and Garbha is womb in Sanskrit. Garbhodaka is basically the water in the womb of the universe, and Garbhodakaśāyī is practically the Lord who is lying on the water within the universe. This is quite remarkable because when a human mother is pregnant, the womb of the mother is similar to the womb of the universe. So you have water within the womb, which is basically going to support creation. And then you have the navel, which is connecting itself to the unborn child, nourishing the unborn child. The navel basically stem goes up in this particular case, and the creative process is being particularly fed by the Lord's creative potency. And right on top, he expands as Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is called Swayambhu because he does not have parents. He is manifest due to the fruitive activities of the living entities who are submerged with Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. And at that point in time, those fruitive activities practically create Lord Brahma, who is manifest from the potency of the Lord, so that he could facilitate those fruitive activities by creating different planetary systems and creating different bodies. Yeah, this is basically why he is called Swayambhu. Yeah, he is called Swayambhu. Now, what is special is that once he is manifest, you have the idea of Gunavataras. So every universe has Rudra, one who is going to destroy, which is Lord Shiva, an expansion of Lord Shiva. And then you have basically Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, who is the super soul. He lies on the Kshira ocean, but also within the universe. And Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu expands into the many different avatars. Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu expands into the many different avatars from the Kshira ocean. That's why you find quite often in Viṣṇu Puran and other places where devotees go and supplicate the Lord for help on the outskirts of the Kshira ocean. They beg for help. Now, all of this is an expansion of the summum bonum. Srila Prabhupada practically gave us the summum bonum. So if you want to understand, if you really want to understand the other incarnations, one who is Krishna conscious has the ability to understand every other incarnation extraordinarily well because he is Krishna conscious. Because he has been given the summum bonum, because you are in touch with the summum bonum, because you are in touch with Krishna, you will have the ability to understand the Leelas of Lord Sri Ram. You will have the ability to understand the Leela of Lord Narasimhadev. You will have the ability to understand the various Leelas given in Srimad Bhagavatam, leading to Krishna's 10th canto. This is particularly quite clear that all of these is contained within that particular experience. It is all contained. So when you go and see Sri Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, the Sri Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan are the origin of Lord Narasimha, Varaha, Rama, and everybody else. These deities here have the ability to practically give realizations of every other incarnation if someone had inclinations. If someone were to be Lord Ram's devotee, they could still come to Vrindavan and chant Lord Ram's names in front of Krishna and Radharani and receive benedictions and knowledge about the Leela of Lord Sri Ram. Because those Leelas are also contained within the Summum Bonum. It is within the deities of Sri Radha and Krishna here in Vrindavan. Vrindavan is the origin of the spiritual sky. It is the core. It is the most confidential summit. As a consequence, everything else is contained within here, just as much as Krishna is also contained here. Everything is contained within Krishna. Now we are looking actually at Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, the creative process. We are trying to understand how the creative process occurs and the role of Lord Sri Brahmā. And all of these are expansions and the expansions and the expansions of the Supreme Lord. Quite fascinating. Srila Prabhupada practically gave us the summum bonum. He just gave us the most confidential aspect of Krishna. Most confidential aspect. It is just fascinating that we have been given something which we can't even imagine attaining. And it has been given to us in this lifetime as we are conscious. So one should receive it and reflect on what's been given on a daily basis to understand that this is very rare and this is basically so rare that we don't want to lose the opportunity to be able to make progress in one lifetime. We do not want to be distracted by economic activity. We do not want to be distracted because of either relationships or the lack thereof. We do not want to be disturbed because of either being in good health or not being in very good health. We do not want to start looking at life as lacking in any way because we have been given something which we can't even hope to achieve, even if we have complete opulence in every other area you can imagine. We have been given something which is so special that if we don't pay attention to this, there would be only one regret. And I tell you this very clearly, that after many, many years, as we grow older, as the body grows older, if there's any one thing a devotee will regret, it's guaranteed, is if they haven't really applied themselves to what's been given by Srila Prabhupada. There will be deep regret because this is very special knowledge, this is very special empowerment. So if you don't apply yourself, then there will be regret because this is too special. And that realization will come. That realization will come. On the other hand, if even if you have failed even if you have failed in practically every other identity that you have assumed in this world. You have failed in everything that you have ever assumed in this world. But if you have held on to the beat bag, and if you have been chanting sincerely and accepting whatever little service in terms of opportunity that you have so that you could render service, and looking and being very grateful for being around the opulence of Krishna, which is the devotees, then there will be no regrets. This is the beauty. The beauty of what we have been given is such that there will be no regrets if we were to fail in everything and just were able to hold on to the beat bag. This is the beauty. And there will be deep regret if we were to succeed in everything, but we have let go of the beat bag. So this is very fascinating because we've been given the summum bonum. Today we are talking about Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. We're talking about Sri Karanodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. But these are expansions of the expansions of the expansions of Krishna. Yeah, you can imagine how our opportunity has been created for us. Srila Prabhupada has practically narrowed down this opportunity, written purports to ensure that there's very minimal distraction, yeah, and we don't get sidetracked, and has created all these opportunities. So as we continue further, we'll find Maitreya Rishi is describing Sri Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. He's describing the experience of Lord Sri Brahmā, yeah, Lord Brahmā, and he is describing finally how he received the knowledge. We spoke about it in the previous session. Maitreya Rishi is a disciple of Sri Parashara. Parashara is Srila Vyasadev's father. Maitreya Rishi received Srimad Bhagavatam in just from Krishna, but in an elaborate form from Sri Parashara. Sri Parashara and Brahaspati, the guru of the demigods, received Srimad Bhagavatam from Sankhya Rishi. Sankhya Rishi received the Srimad Bhagavatam from the Kumaras. The Kumaras, who are also considered an expansion of Krishna because they are Satyavesha, they are empowered expansions of Krishna, who display renunciation and focus. The Kumaras received this knowledge from Lord Ananta. It is fascinating that they had a mystical process where the Kumaras, they were in the higher planetary systems of Satyaloka. Lord Ananta is in the spiritual sky, but below the material manifestation, which means he is much lower than, in terms of the spiritual sky, you can just you kind of assume that the spiritual sky is a sphere. It's a spherical, it's a ball. Then there is space above the ball. Sorry, the material sky is a ball. There's space above the ball, and there's also space below the ball. Now, once you go below the ball, there's Lord Ananta. Above the ball, in the spiritual sky, you have innumerable Vaikuntha planets. Now, the Kumaras traveled down from Brahmaloka all the way down to where Lord Ananta is by mystically entering the Ganga, which flows from the spiritual sky to the lower part of the universe. So it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, they mystically entered into it, and then they were able to travel unimaginable distance by dipping into the water and then coming out of the water again at the lotus feet of Lord Ananta. So there's a mystical process. It is said the shikas, the shika, which is the hair at the top of the head of the Kumaras, it was wet because they had dipped into the Ganga, the mystical Ganga, and they stepped out and they actually sat in audience before Lord Shankarshana. Sankarshana, who is Ananta, who is Balaram, fundamentally, Ananta himself, Nityanandaram, he is constantly in extraordinary spiritual bliss, glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam. With his thousands of mouths, he is constantly in spiritual bliss, glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam. He is just glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Kumaras reached him and sat at his lotus feet. Imagine, they received this knowledge from Lord Ananta himself. And how unlimited must be the glory of Srimad Bhagavatam, that Lord Ananta, as he sat there, he is constantly speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. He is constantly immersed in the sweetness of Srimad Bhagavatam. His eyes are half closed and he appears to be intoxicated. Yeah, he drinks a little Varuni, yeah, which is the very sweet drink that is made for his pleasure. And then he gets intoxicated because of the sweetness. So it's like having too many gulab jamuns, and then one can feel a bit intoxicated because they've had too many sweets. So in a similar fashion, this is not the mode of ignorance. Yeah, intoxication can be the mode of ignorance. One can ingest liquor, they can have some kind of fermented wine, and then you can be intoxicated. That's the mode of ignorance. This is not the mode of ignorance. This is transcendental, but he's still intoxicated. He's intoxicated by Srimad Bhagavatam, and then he's also intoxicated by the liquor that he drinks, which is made of Varuni. You know, it has got no, it is not the same. It is not to be compared to what's available on this planet for intoxication. And the Kumaras sit before him, and he receives, you know, he's imparting this extraordinary knowledge to the Kumaras, and they receive it and they pass it on to it via disciplic succession. So let's read through the verses. I think I covered a bunch of verses the last time, but I'm just going to cover the rest, and then we'll take a few questions. Let's just quickly read through the translation because of time. This is the first verse of chapter 8, Manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotees because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family, and it's wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. Yeah, there's always said that when you speak Srimad Bhagavatam, or when you read Srimad Bhagavatam, and if you have upgraded your japa from the previous year to this year, the same verse would give more realizations, it would give you clarifications, it would lead you to understand the nature of transcendence even more deeply. So even though this has been relished by so many speakers, there are realizations of the present speaker after hearing from his predecessors. So he takes the realizations as well, which makes it even more sweeter. So Maitreya Rishi is particularly enthused because he will receive realizations in his heart by the mercy of his Guru, as he is being prompted to speak Srimad Bhagavatam by Sri Vidura. Let me now begin speaking on Bhagavad Purana, which was directly spoken to the great sages by the personality of Godhead for the benefit of those who are entangled in extreme miseries for the sake of very little pleasure. Yeah, this is us, entangled in extreme miseries for the sake of very little pleasure. Extreme miseries. Unfortunate. Some time ago, being inquisitive to know, Sanat Kumara, the chief of the boy saints, accompanied by other great sages, inquired exactly like you about truths regarding Vasudeva, the Supreme Lord, from Lord Sankarshana, who is seated at the bottom of the universe. At that time, Lord Sankarshana was meditating upon his Supreme Lord, whom the learned esteem as Lord Vasudeva, but for the sake of the advancement of the great learned sages, he slightly opened his lotus-like eyes and began to speak. The sages came from the highest planets down to the lower region through the water of the Ganga, and therefore the hair on their heads were wet. They touched the lotus feet of the Lord, which are worshipped with various paraphernalia by the daughters of the serpent king when they desire good husbands. Lord Ananta, he has a physical form, as we know, which is very whitish, and who is basically like Balaram. And the same form is also seen as Lord Ananta. So you can kind of have a combination of both. When Balaram appears, he appears as Ananta with multiple hoods, or he appears in his two-arm form, as he did with Krishna. Now, the serpent kings, or the princesses from the Nagaloka, who are very fortunate because they received mercy from Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is one of the greatest worshippers and devotees of Lord Ananta, Lord Sankarshana. And he grants desires. So he empowers and he grants desires to the Naga princesses. And those princesses then end up coming to serve Lord Sankarshana by the mercy of Lord Shiva. And that's what is being mentioned here, that the lotus feet of the Lord are worshipped with various paraphernalia by the daughters of the serpent king when they desire good husbands. They are practically desiring Lord Ananta. The four Kumaras, headed by Sanat Kumara, who all knew the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, glorified the Lord in rhythmic accents with selected words full of affection and love. At that time, Lord Sankarshana, with his thousands of raised hoods, began to radiate as effulgence from the glowing stones on his head. Yeah, he enjoys kirtan as well. If there's very, very good kirtan, very empowered kirtan, which is very touching to the heart, Lord Ananta is definitely manifest in that particular assembly because he loves to hear the glorification of Krishna. Lord Sankarshana thus spoke the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam to the great sage Sanat Kumara, who had already taken the vow of renunciation. Sanat Kumara also, in his turn, when inquired by Sankhayana Muni, explained Srimad Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Sankarshana. The great sage Sankhayana was a chief amongst the transcendentalists, and when he was describing the glories of the Lord in terms of Srimad Bhagavatam, it so happened that my spiritual master Parashara and Brihaspati both heard him. The great sage Parashara, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulastya, spoke unto me the foremost of the Puranas, Srimad Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you're always my faithful follower. This is Parashara talking to Maitreya Muni. At that time, when the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu was alone lying on his bedstead, the great snake Ananta. And although he appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. Again, we'll have to distinguish when the Lord is in Nidra, his Nidra is not the mode of ignorance. When we are in Nidra, which is basically sleeping, we are in the mode of ignorance. We are in the mode of ignorance. When the Lord is in Nidra, this is through his internal potency. He is not influenced by his external potency. Being influenced by the external potency is our situation, where we sleep for many hours, more than what is required. Just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, the Lord remained within water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in the subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated energy called Kala. The Lord lay down for 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas in his internal potency, and by his external energy, he appeared to be sleeping within the water. So he was in Yoga Nidra, internal potency. Externally, he appeared to be sleeping. When the living entities were coming out for further development of their fruitive activities, actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti, he saw his transcendental body as bluish. Blue, depending on where it occurs, is considered to be in the mode of ignorance. It is influenced by fruitive activity because it's destructive. Yeah? Lord Shiva, when he appears as a guru, he is described in the 4th canto. He appears in front of the prachetas to instruct them as they were going for meditation. Lord Shiva's appearance is not described as being bluish. It is described as being golden. So Lord Shiva, when he is appearing as a guru, he appears in a golden form. The neck of Lord Shiva is bluish because he keeps the poison contained in that particular neck, the poison that he ingested during the churning of the ocean. So it is being said here that the fruitive activity of the living entities who were submerged along with the Lord particularly made him appear bluish during that time. This is very deep blue. It's a different kind of blue. This is the blue of Kala. So sometimes you see that external energy, Mother Kali appears very bluish. That blue is very different from Krishna's blue. Krishna's blue is the bluish cloud covering a coral mountain. Yeah, it's a coral mountain, which means it's very reddish and pinkish, but then it's blue, it's covered. So if you were to pinch Krishna, if one can pinch Krishna, then he will turn red. Yeah, he will turn red, and that red would be like a coral red, and then the blue would come back. Yeah, that's why his face is such that it is bluish, where it is compared to the coral mountain covered by the evening cloud. Yeah, where there's some red which is covered by blue. That is not the same as what is being described here as being bluish. This is basically a feature of Kala. Yeah, it's basically considered tamasic. The subtle subject matter of creation on which the Lord's attention was fixed was agitated by the material mode of passion, and thus the subtle form of creation pierced through his abdomen. Piercing through this sum total form of fruitive activity of the living entities, took the shape of the bud of a lotus flower generated from the personality of Viṣṇu, and by his supreme will it illuminated everything like the sun and dried up the vast waters of devastation. Yeah. So there was a lot of heat that was generated from the navel as the lotus came up. And this lotus was sum total of the fruitive activities of the living entities who were submerged with the Lord during the time of dissolution. So that particular lotus had so much heat that it dried up the water of dissolution. So things became calm again. Into that universal lotus flower, Lord Viṣṇu personally entered as a super soul. And when it was thus impregnated with all the modes of material nature, the personality of Vedic wisdom, whom we call the self-born, was generated. Swayambhu. This is Lord Brahma being generated from the lotus flower, because Krishna's creative potency enters into that particular being, and he enters as a super soul. And so the creative potency manifests itself as Lord Brahma. And depending on the complexity of the fruitive activities that have to be catered to, Lord Brahma's features are also quite different in different universes. Brahma, born out of the lotus flower, could not see the world, although he was situated in the womb. He therefore circumambulated all of space while moving his eyes in all directions. He achieved 4 heads in terms of the 4 directions. He was bewildered when he appeared first because he didn't know where he was, he didn't know what to do. Lord Brahma, situated in the lotus, could not perfectly understand the creation, the lotus or himself. At the end of the millennium, the air of devastation began to move the water and the lotus in great circular waves. This can't even be imagined by us. You can't imagine being alone, not knowing why you appeared, not knowing what you ought to do, and then you find that all this extraordinary movement occurs around you. Lord Brahma, in his ignorance, contemplated, who am I that I am situated on top of this lotus? Wherefrom has it sprouted? There must be something downward, and that from which this lotus has grown must be within the water. So this is Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus. But in spite of entering the stem and going near the navel of Viṣṇu, he could not trace out the root. So it is not so much a matter of being able to go near the Lord. If he doesn't desire you to know him, we can't know him. Yeah, that's why we find sometimes that we can't appreciate anything which is connected to him. It's time to cry. It is really time to cry if you can't appreciate prasadam. You can't appreciate the deity. You can't appreciate Harinam. You can't appreciate the association of devotees. You can't appreciate Srimad Bhagavatam. And there are all kinds of doubts and all kinds of, I would say, disappointment that's raging in our heart, even when surrounded by Krishna in so many different ways. The only thing the devotee should do at that time is go sit near Srila Prabhupada and cry. Beg Krishna, saying, what is this? I can't even appreciate your prasadam. I can't appreciate being here. I can't appreciate scripture. I can't appreciate Naam. I can't appreciate devotees. What kind of a calamitous situation is this? That I've identified so much with my own aspirations. I've identified so much with this body that I can't appreciate anything outside of this body. I can't appreciate you. So sometimes you can be in an environment where there can be a lot of spiritual activity and we can practically not experience anything. It's very unfortunate, but that requires Krishna to come and provide mercy. So what is it one has to do if they find themselves in such a circumstance? We have to start begging. That's the only route. Start begging from Srila Prabhupada. That's what we need to do. If you have a spiritual master, start begging him. Otherwise, Srila Prabhupada. O Vidura, while searching in that way about his existence, Brahma reached his ultimate time, which is eternal being in the hand of Viṣṇu, which generates fear in the mind of the living entity like the fear of death. Thereafter, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back to the top of the lotus. Thus, controlling all objectives, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord. At the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge, and as a result, he could see in his heart the Supreme within himself, whom he could not see before with the greatest endeavor. This is the beauty. The Lord manifested in Lord Brahma's heart. And before this, Lord Brahma went searching and he couldn't find him. But because he received mercy and he chanted sincerely and he followed the system given by Krishna, Krishna appeared in his heart. Lord Narayan appeared in his heart. Instead of going to search here and there, he did what Krishna asked him to do, and Krishna appeared in his heart and gave him darshan. It's beautiful. Brahma could see that on the water there was a gigantic lotus-like white bedstead, the body of Seshanaga, on which the personality of Godhead was lying alone. The whole atmosphere was illuminated by the rays of jewels bedecking the head of Seshanaga, and the illumination dissipated all the darkness of those regions. Sesha means that which is left. So the expansions of the Lord as Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, then Sesha is simply an expansion of Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, who would practically manifest as paraphernalia, bed, so on and so forth. The luster of the transcendental body of the Lord mocked the beauty of the coral mountain. The coral mountain is very beautifully dressed by the evening sky, but the yellow dress of the Lord mocked its beauty. There is gold on the summit of the mountain, but the Lord's helmet bedecked with jewels mocked it. The mountains, waterfalls, herbs, etc., with a panorama of flowers seemed like garlands, but the Lord's gigantic body and his hands and legs decorated with jewels, pearls, tulasi leaves, and flower garlands mocked the scene on the mountain. His transcendental body, unlimited in length and breadth, occupied the three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. His body was self-illuminated by the unparalleled dress and variegatedness and was properly ornamented. The Lord showed his lotus feet by raising them. His lotus feet are the source of all rewards achieved by the devotional service free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from his moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. He also acknowledged the service of the devotees and vanquished their distress by his beautiful smile. The reflection of his face, decorated with earrings, was so pleasing it dazzled with the rays from his lips and the beauty of his nose and eyebrows. You can imagine this is a description of Sri Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, which is a description of Srimad Narayana. Now, imagine that Krishna's beauty is so unparalleled that it surpasses even this kind of description. Unimaginable. O my dear Vidura, the Lord's waist was covered with yellow cloth, resembling the saffron dust of the Kadamba flower, and it was encircled by a well-decorated belt. His chest was decorated with the Srivatsa marking and a necklace of unlimited value. As a sandalwood tree is decorated with fragrant flowers and branches, the Lord's body was decorated with valuable jewels and pearls. He was the self-situated tree, the Lord of all others in the universe. As the sandalwood tree is covered with many snakes, so the Lord's body was also covered by the hoods of Ananta. Like a great mountain, the Lord stands as the abode for all moving and non-moving living entities. He is the friend of the snakes because Lord Ananta is his friend. As the mountain has thousands of golden peaks, so the Lord was seen with thousands of golden helmeted hoods of Anantanag. And as the mountain is sometimes filled with jewels, so also his transcendental body was fully decorated with valuable jewels. As the mountain is sometimes submerged in the ocean water, so the Lord is sometimes submerged in the water of devastation. Lord Brahma, thus looking upon the Lord in the shape of a mountain, concluded that he was Hari, the personality of Godhead. He saw that the garland of flowers on his chest glorified him with Vedic wisdom and sweet songs and looked very beautiful. He was protected by the Sudarshana wheel for fighting, and even the sun, moon, air, fire, etc. could not have access to him. When Lord Brahma, the maker of the universal destination, thus saw the Lord, he simultaneously glanced over creation. Lord Brahma saw the lake in Lord Vishnu's navel and the lotus flower, as well as the devastating water, the drying air, and the sky. All became visible to him. Lord Brahma, thus being surcharged with the mode of passion, became inclined to create. And after seeing the 5 causes of creation indicated by the personality of Godhead, he began to offer his respectful prayers on the path of the creative mentality. So that ends the chapter. And I think this ends, we'll go on to the next chapter 9 in the subsequent week. So I have 15 minutes for questions. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to take them.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes. Are you able to hear me as well?
Yes, I am. Yes, that's fine. Correct. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful class and amazing points you put forward. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I do want to ask you about. You mentioned about the Vaikuntha planets. You've mentioned about the difference between the material and the spiritual world and the spiritual sky, right? In Prabhupada does actually talk about the internal energy of the Lord as being threefold, which is the Ladini, the Samvit, and the Sandhini Shaktis, and the material energy constituting of the 3 modes of material nature. So in other words, you're always under the influence of Maya, either in the form of the internal energy or the external energy. So in the material world, we are known as the marginal energy of the Lord, as we find in many of the points Srila Prabhupada puts forward. So as we are part of the marginal energy, in Krishna consciousness, we sometimes find ourselves, well, in Krishna consciousness, we find ourselves having access to understanding the internal energy and being under the influence of Yoga Maya. But there are times where we're not so sure which of the Mayas we're under the influence of, whether it's Yoga Maya or Mahamaya. How in the material world can we ensure that we're under the influence of the internal Maya, under the influence of Yoga Maya in terms of Ladini, Samvit, and Sandhini Shaktis, which relate to truth, knowledge, and bliss? How do we ensure that we don't fall under the sort of spell of Mahamaya? And is it possible to fall come into contact with Mahamaya in the Vaikuntha planets also?
Okay, I think I think I'll take the last part first, and then I will answer the others. Can you come in touch with Mahamaya in the Vaikuntha planets? The answer is no. One cannot come in touch with the external energy in the Vaikuntha planets, because the external energy has the ingredient of Kala, which is the time factor, which is material time, which has the past, present, and future. In the Vaikuntha planets, there is no destruction. So there isn't the destructive aspect of what is experienced in this world. So one doesn't come in touch with external energy. The potency of Sandhini is the potency that maintains the entire spiritual sky, which is the potency of Balaram. And that potency is the potency of eternality. And that eternality includes even Krishna's own form. So it is Balaram's Sandhini potency which also practically manifests Krishna's form. It's very important to understand that Balaram is non-different. His potency of Sandhini is practically manifesting itself. The bliss part is provided by Srimati Radharani, which is the Hladini Shakti, and then you have Samvit, which is basically Krishna himself, because the Sambandha has to be given by him. Krishna Sambandha has to come from Krishna himself. So that particular aspect is being ruled by that. Now, from the perspective of how do you ensure that you're not in touch with the external energy versus the internal energy? Now, most importantly, when Krishna is observing us, he is observing us as a consolidation. He has a very consolidated view of who we are. So there are times when we're able to focus. There are times when we cannot focus. So he practically understands that he should take what we would call as a very holistic view of who we are. So he says this, that do not worry, because if you have engaged in devotional service, I will not forget you. I will facilitate you so that you could continue your devotional service. So he is fully cognizant that one can come in touch with external energy and be diverted. And this is manifested in the pastimes of Jaya and Vijaya, who are gatekeepers of Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. Because Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, the whole Shira ocean is within the construct of the material universe. Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu is within the material universe. They are in touch with material energy. Otherwise, they would not have fallen down. When they came in touch with material energy, they forgot their original objectives. They were bewildered and they insulted the Kumaras and they did not allow them to enter. So when the Lord comes down in a hurry, he realizes his servants have committed a mistake. He makes a statement saying that they have forgotten me. So one has the capacity to forget Krishna because of coming in touch with external energy, even when engaging in direct service to him, as we saw in the case of Jaya and Vijaya, because you can come in touch with Maya there. It is not the Vaikuntha planet. It is within the material sphere. That's why they were in touch with the external energy. Now, what is the consequence? The consequence is also being seen that Krishna interacts with them based on that particular curse. He delivers them, even though they're cursed to become asuras and they become deviant. And they have those 3 lifetimes as Ravana, Kumbhakarna, Shishupal, Dantavakra, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu. Delivers them and then brings them back to where they were. Krishna never forgets. So that is the first point. He never forgets. He takes a very consolidated view of service. That's the first point. He understands that we are marginal, we are tatastha, we can come in touch with either or. Now, how do we do our part to not fall into that particular mode of trying to come in touch with Maya? Our part, and our very important part that we need to do, is we need to constantly offer prayers. Srila Prabhupada, one day as he was standing in front of the deities, there's a certain degree of familiarity of his older disciples because they didn't know how to interact with the spiritual master. So as he was standing before the deities, when he visits new temples, he used to stand, meditate, tears used to gush from his eyes. He was in prema, so he was exhibiting transcendental ecstatic symptoms. The devotees asked him once, saying, Srila Prabhupada, we see you praying in front of the deities. What is it that you ask for when you are standing in front of the deities? And Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain that I was asking that I should never fall down. So this is Srila Prabhupada's humility. So our own position is such that we have to be aware of the pitfalls of being in touch with material energy. And we have to constantly offer prayers and ask for mercy so that we do not fall prey to Krishna's external energy. So these prayers can be very personal, or they can follow in the footsteps of predecessor acharyas. So we can read the prayers of predecessor acharyas by offering prayers to them. So in other words, you can glorify Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and offer a personal prayer to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and read his Sharanagati prayers. You can offer personal prayers to Narottam Das Thakur and then read his prayers. Yeah, you can do all of these because those prayers themselves, you will notice, is they're filled with all kinds of emotions, one of them being humility, the other being helplessness, and the other being dependence as well. So we need to develop those qualities, and we need to follow in the footsteps of our predecessors, understanding that there is risk, no one is beyond that risk, and we always need to constantly desire that we always remain under the shelter of the Lord, which means remaining under the shelter of the Vaishnavas. There's always got to be a desire so that we're able to move forward, which means there has to be some active consideration of the risk, and we need to be able to offer prayers so that we're able to mitigate that risk, so that Krishna takes notice and says, okay, I'm in your heart, you're sincere, I will protect you, don't worry. So that's what I would suggest to keep ourselves safe for the longer term.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful points. Hare Krishna.
Sure. Hare Krishna. I believe there are a few questions on chat. Do the Lord's incarnations of Ram, Narasimha, and Varaha have 60 opulences, or all 64? If the answer is 64, what distinguishes Krishna from these three incarnations? Actually, they are 60. Only Krishna has 64. So that's why we have Leela Madhurya, Prema Madhurya, Rupa Madhurya, Venu Madhurya. These are 4 qualities, and these are 64. This is the absolute, I would say, extreme or unlimited opulence of Krishna includes 64, while Lord Ram, Lord Narasimha, and Lord Varaha, they have 60 qualities. Okay, I loved the point that you said that even if you fail in all aspects of life, but if you don't leave the beat bag, then you will not have any regrets. Yeah, very grateful for this instruction. Yes. Yeah, I firmly believe in that. I firmly believe in the fact that as devotees, we will regret not being able to stay chaste to devotional service. You will not regret losing this, losing that, not being able to do this or not being able to do that. You will not. Those regrets would be far less than the regret of not being able to be consistent with what's been given to us. If the lower half of the universe is filled with water, how is it that the modern scientists cannot see it, considering the Earth seems to be in the center of the universe, according to the Vedic model? The distance to be traversed and the 14 planetary systems above and below, the planetary systems, 7 planetary systems above, they're all quite subtle. Swarga is subtle. Then you have Janaloka, Maharloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka. These are all subtle. They're not manifest in the eyes. These planetary systems and the residents themselves are not manifest. The great incarnations, such as Lord Dattatreya, and the great devotees, such as Brigu and other sages, they're all in Maharloka. They're engaging in all kinds of activities. They're waiting for the dissolution, and then they would depart. They also influence human life by instructions, inspiration, manifesting themselves wherever they have to influence life. But they're all in Maharloka. Similarly, the lower planetary systems, which are quite dense, are not seen by the scientists either. So it's like saying that the scientists do not even know the full extent of what's probably on this planet. You can probably visualize it, but there might be aspects of it which may actually be quite bewildering. Yeah, you can put things in front of someone, but they may not really be able to discern things. This is a truth, especially if it has mystical aspects to it. It will not reveal itself unless the person who is intended to receive that knowledge is in front of it. That's how it's designed. So the water is also subtle that holds the universe. How should one prepare to come and live in Vraja? Today's class ignited my desire to live in Vraja. Can you let me know how should one prepare to come and live in Vraja? One should chant Harinam, come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam, wherever we are in the world. Serve Mahaprabhu to receive mercy and develop a desire of wanting to come and stay in Vraja. Even before we come to Vraja, one needs to have the ability or the focus of just wanting to stay in Vraja. One cannot stay in Vrindavan if there are any other objectives. If you have any other objective, Vrindavan can make you feel very restless. If the only objective is to be here to serve Harinam and to experience Vrindavan, to serve Krishna, then one feels extraordinarily joyful and one is extraordinarily inspired to remain in Vrindavan. Otherwise, you cannot be in Vrindavan. So to prepare to come to Vrindavan, one needs to have already attained that state where they want nothing else but to be in Vrindavan. And when they come to Vrindavan, they want nothing else but to be in Vrindavan. That should be the only prayer. Then Vrindavan would reveal itself. Otherwise, the agitation of the mind whilst being in Vrindavan is far greater than it would be in New Jersey. I can assure you. Okay, I think I can take just one question and then we will end. I have a couple of minutes. Okay, so I don't see any other question. So I appreciate everybody. Actually, in our building, right in the ground floor, His Holiness Bibi Govind Maharaj is isolating. He has COVID. You might have seen this on Facebook. He might have posted he is COVID positive. What is strange is that he had taken his vaccines, and I had seen him, I bumped into him a few times, and he was basically, he had taken his vaccines, but yet he became COVID positive, and he's isolating in the ground floor of our building. One of his servants who used to visit the building with Maharaj, you could always see them together in Vrindavan. He passed away this week due to COVID, and he was a very young devotee who is a Brajvasi who always used to be with Maharaj. He practically used to manage Maharaj's property here. Because I live next to Bibi Govind Maharaj's property, our building, so it's just next door. So what we are seeing is that in India, it's quite an extraordinary explosion of infection. And it is just very intense. It's never been this way before. So you just do not even know what you're in touch with. And it's very difficult to discern if you're safe. So in such circumstances, one basically just chants and takes very deep shelter and basically allows Krishna and to protect. This is basically to just allow Krishna to protect and take care. You have Pankajangri Prabhu being sick. There are so many devotees who are sick. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable. It was not this bad, the last wave. India was spared, but this one, I think they let the ball down. They let the guard down, and it's just very intense. It's just very intense. But we all know that what is it that we have always done as devotees? There's only one consistent response as devotees over centuries. 500 years back, when Mahaprabhu gave us Vrindavan, and the Goswamis of Vrindavan resided here, there were Islamic invasions, which practically gave so much pain and tribulation to the Vaishnavas that they had to vacate Vrindavan. They had to take their deities and go away. What did we do? We just chanted. We just continued our deity worship. What did we do when there were other challenges that came along with the colonial suppression and other distortions that came along? We just chanted. What did we do with the war, the First World War and the Second World War and the other wars? We just chanted. So that's what we would be doing. We'll just be chanting and taking deeper shelter of Naam. and using some common sense as well along the way to protect ourselves. So anyways, I was just wanting to say that there are so many devotees who are just practically being incapacitated this time in Vrindavan. They've already lost around 3 congregation members, 4. Gaudiya Math has lost 2. We had a few devotees pass away. So yeah, it's just quite intense. Very good. So we'll chat again next week by Krishna's grace. We'll connect again and we'll take further. Please do offer prayers for all the devotees who are requiring